Welcome to Navigating Advocacy, the true crime podcast that goes beyond storytelling to ignite change and seek justice. I'm Melissa.
And I'm Whitney. As true crime enthusiasts turned passionate advocates, we've seen the power of storytelling raise awareness about unsolved crimes and bring hope to victims and their families. We hope to inspire action and promote positive change within the true crime community.
Our mission is simple. We provide a platform for victims and their families to share their stories, to be heard, and find solidarity. But we don't stop there. We offer practical guidance to our listeners on how they can actively make a difference in their own communities.
In each episode, we'll discuss a different unsolved case. We'll examine the details, highlight potential leads, and strive to spark new interests that may help advance the investigation. Our goal is to reignite hope and ultimately bring justice where it's long overdue.
But this podcast is about more than just a conversation. It's about building a community of like-minded individuals who share a common purpose, making a real difference in the fight for justice. Whether you're a seasoned true crime fan or new to the genre, we invite you to join us on this journey of discovery and advocacy.
Together, we can create a wave of change. We're here to empower you to also become advocates for change, no matter where or who you are. We are Navigating Advocacy.
We discuss topics that may be sensitive to listeners. Discretion is advised.
This week, we are navigating the disappearance of a mother and son in Bismarck, North Dakota. Bismarck is the second most populous city in the state, following Fargo, with a population of just over 54,000 in 1996 when my case took place. The crime rates in 1996 show that Bismarck's violent crime rates were lower than the state average, so not too bad. The disappearance of 36-year-old Sandra Mary Jacobson created many questions and even more suspicions with each passing year. Sandra was the mother to two boys and an employee of the North Dakota Department of Transportation. She was 5 foot 6 inches tall, had bright green eyes, brown hair, and wore glasses. She was known to family and friends as Sandy, and her children meant the world to her. Sandy had been married twice, once to her 16-year-old son Spencer's father, Vernon, and then several years later to Alan Jacobson, her 5-year-old son John's father. Sandy had separated from Alan a few months prior to her disappearance and was under the impression that her husband was in the process of filing for divorce and could be serving her with papers at any moment. She mentioned this to several family members that she was awaiting this paperwork. In the midst of the separation, Sandy, Spencer, and John had moved into a mobile home in nearby Center, North Dakota. It's a small town about 40 miles northwest of Bismarck with a population of less than 600 people and is calculated to be the geographical center of North America.
What? That's exciting, even though it's a very tiny, tiny town.
It was a cold winter day on Saturday, November 16th, 1996 in Bismarck. The high of 22 degrees and a light snow steadily dusting the capital city created for a beyond cold evening. Sandy had made plans to take her youngest son, John, to her mother's house off of University Drive in Bismarck for dinner. While en route, Sandy made a call to the Bismarck Police Department from her cell phone to report some suspicious activity happening on a farm in Center. When Sandy called into the police department, she sounded distressed and tried to explain to the dispatcher that there were people hosting satanic rituals on this farm. When asked as to why she didn't contact the Center Police Department, she stated that she called Bismarck because the local law enforcement officials could not be trusted. Sandy was adamant that her loved one was in danger of this satanic cult. The police took the report and the call ended.
Oh, wow.
Sandy arrived at her mother's house around 7:30 p.m., stayed for about an hour, and her mother mentioned that she was concerned with Sandy's mental state and asked her if she could take her to the hospital for treatment. Sandy was showing signs of mental illness. After some convincing, Sandy agreed, but told her mother she had to get gas before they could go and would meet her back at her mother's house. Sandy again loaded John back into her 1990 model gray Honda Civic and pulled out of the driveway. She turned into a local gas station and wrote a check to pay for her gasoline. And when Sandy did not arrive back at her mother's house by 10 p.m., and after several attempts to reach her, Sandy's mother contacted the police department and reported both Sandy and John missing. The next day, an abandoned gray Honda Civic was found near the Missouri River at Centennial Park. The driver's side door was wide open, keys in the ignition, a full tank of gas, and a purse was in the front seat. There was no driver's license found inside the purse, but other identifying items were there. Sandy's checkbook, her employee identification, and other personal items. The dusting of snow left no indication of where the driver could have gone, if there was a struggle, or any leads as to why this car was left here. Law enforcement immediately knew something was wrong when the door was open in the below freezing temperatures. Even with this concern, the car was not processed for fingerprints or DNA evidence. A quick search of the surrounding areas warranted no directions into which the driver could have gone. And being that this was on a Sunday and the missing persons report was filed late Saturday evening, the officer investigating the abandoned car and the officer assigned the missing persons report did not make the connection that this gray Honda could be a part of a crime scene until Monday. Once Detective Turnbull gathered the missing persons report, the abandoned Honda, and the 911 call that all had come in, he immediately was concerned that Sandy may have had a moment of psychosis and walked into the freezing waters with her child. The sheriff's department brought out a dive team in an attempt to search the Missouri River, but had to abandon the mission fairly quickly due to the high currents and inclement weather. The river was beginning to freeze over and large shards of ice were already forming.
That is terrifying on so many levels. The weather, the car, the possible satanic cult, the mental illness. It's just so much going on.
Sandy's husband, Alan, was notified of his wife and son's disappearance, and he was called in for an interview. He stated that he had been away in Missouri for business from the morning of November 16th through November 18th. During this interview, Alan notified Detective Turnbull that he had not filed for divorce and that they were having marital problems. He claimed that Sandy was certain that Alan was having an affair and that she would go through phases of religious obsessions. When Detective Turnbull asked when he had last heard from his wife, Alan said Sandy called him at 6:15 the morning she disappeared and asked him specifically to recite the Lord's Prayer for their son. Further conversations on November 26th with Sandy's loved ones led to a potential third person maybe being in Sandy's car the day she disappeared. A close family member that remains unnamed in the police files suspected that someone was with Sandy in her car. They said she was speaking differently than usual and that when they went to end the call, Sandy did not say "I love you" at the end of the call, which she never neglected to say. Detective Turnbull released Sandy's belongings to Alan because they were married. Alan was even granted access to Sandy's home, where he took several items. Her Honda Civic was given back to him on December 23rd. The car was never processed as a crime scene. Having no new leads on where Sandy could have gone, Detective Turnbull's investigation slows to a halt. He also neglected to verify Alan's work trip itinerary to verify his alibi.
Are you kidding me?
This is just step one of how this police department failed Sandy. It would be over a month later when his supervisors suggested that Turnbull check into Alan's work trip. In the interview, Alan stated that he and 6 other people rode in a van from North Dakota to Missouri and that they had left around 8 a.m. on Saturday, November 16th. It was roughly a 15-hour drive. Alan said that they stayed in the Westport Hotel Sunday night. The hotel manager confirmed that Alan did stay there for one single night on Sunday, but that he could not provide a copy of the report without a subpoena. And that's where Detective Turnbull left it. He didn't push further to get that report.
Oh, you don't need it.
With no clear indication of where Alan stayed the night Sandy disappeared, Turnbull noted in his file that his alibi had been vetted.
Oh, Nice. They checked up. They did their job. Let's just cross that off.
January 7th of 1997, Alan's coworker, Arnold, wrote a letter to Detective Turnbull verifying that he was with Alan on this trip. He said he picked him up at 8:15 at Northwest Tire on South Biz Expressway and that the two drove the 11 hours southeast to St. Joseph, Missouri. They stayed the night and then the next morning drove on to St. Louis. He said that they did some sightseeing, they even went to the Arch, and then when they got back to the hotel, Alan had a message to return to Bismarck. Arnold took Alan to the airport Monday morning for him to fly back to Bismarck. This note was left in the file as further verification of Alan's alibi, but was not checked out. He just dropped the note in the file. Turnbull did not call this coworker or even ask where they stayed in St. Joseph.
Yeah, all of this could be easily verified to double check, make sure, hard evidence that the husband has an alibi.
And this information was given to him in a timely manner so that the hotels wouldn't have destroyed the records by then.
Exactly. Yes.
In the spring of 1997, police put out a plea to media for assistance in keeping an eye out for Sandy and John. The only item that was uncovered from this plea was a child's shoe found along the Missouri River on May 20th. Alan told detectives that he believed it was his son's shoe, but both Spencer and Sandy's mother were adamant that the shoe was far too large for John to wear. 7 years pass without an advancement in Sandy and John's disappearance. In 2004, the Missing and Exploited Children's Center reached out to Alan for pictures for missing flyers, but they also wanted DNA to create an accurate age progression photo. Alan declined any attempts for them to reach him. This is when they reached out to Sergeant Connor. Sergeant Connor was one of the deputies on call the night Sandy's car was found. He had a canine partner that he took up and down the beach and surrounding area for hours that night and turned up no evidence. He says that he remembers it because the cold was so brutal, and he remembers seeing the shards of ice forming in the river. So it was a very memorable evening for him.
Yes, understandable. Father's Day is right around the corner, and I always struggle helping my kids pick something out for their dad. Neither of our husbands wear ties, and I'm pretty sure your husband already owns every piece of beer-themed apparel known to man.
Yes, he does. I want to get something different for a change. I want to get something that he'll actually want to use.
My husband loves to take our electric e-bike to our neighborhood golf course. And with the customizable cargo accessories, he can easily carry his golf bag with him.
Electric e-bikes has created a mode of transportation that anyone can ride, and they offer a wide range of customizable options, including rides from the effortlessly fun XP Lite to a highly capable cargo e-bike, the Expedition. These bikes can reach up to 28 miles per hour with the twist of a throttle or next-level pedal assist.
Skip the played-out gifts this Father's Day and give the gift of adventure with electric e-bikes. Visit electricebikes.com and learn more and explore the epic models Lectric has to offer.
That's electricebikes.com.
Summer vacation isn't just a break for my kids. I love the extra time, too. That is why we use HelloFresh. It delivers mouth-watering, chef-crafted recipes with fresh ingredients to my door, so I can spend my summer doing whatever I want.
With HelloFresh's Market, they have snacks, meals, and different items that I can add to my weekly order. The s'mores bundle is a hit in my house. I say it's for the kids, but honestly, it's my favorite. As Melissa said, I love that HelloFresh saves me so much time. Plus, it gives me the perfect opportunity to have my kids help with dinner.
I completely agree. It has been amazing watching my teenagers learn to follow the recipes that HelloFresh offers. And the fact that HelloFresh has so many options each week keeps my boys very happy.
Did you know that every plate is now owned by HelloFresh? And with a wider array of meals, there's something for everyone?
Yes, I love switching between the brands, and now our listeners can enjoy both brands at a discount with me.
Go to HelloFresh.com/Cabernet16 and use code Cabernet16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping.
That's HelloFresh.com/Cabernet16 and use the code Cabernet16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping.
America's #1 meal kit. With it being so emotional for him, he was able to gain access to the file and reopen the investigation. In 2005, Allen agreed to sit down with Sergeant Connor, where he claimed that he did send photos to the Children's Center. He said he mailed them in, but that he had no interest in sending in a DNA sample, even if it could help.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Oh my gosh. Why would he not want to find his son?
Or his wife.
Yes, as well as his wife. But I'm thinking if he had problems, really was going to divorce her, didn't care about her as much at that point, it's still his son. He would, in my mind, you'd want to do anything, no matter what, to find your son.
Exactly.
I'd be like, do you need me to chop off my pinky finger? Because I will, to find my son, let alone here's a little DNA.
When Connor asked Allen again about the divorce and how the marriage was, he told him that he did indeed have an affair and that was why the two separated. He then went on to say that the two reconciled and that they had scheduled to attend couples counseling through Sandy's insurance, but Sandy never showed up for the appointment. This threw up a red flag for Connor. Being that it's medical records, he had to file for a subpoena before he was granted any sort of paperwork related to it. Once Sergeant Connor had it in hand, there was no record of any sort of appointment ever being scheduled.
Okay, that's a bit sus. And he's blaming it on the wife as well. Oh, she didn't go. Like he was just trying to work through it. And at first I was thinking her mental illness had something to do with possibly believing he was having an affair when he really wasn't. But turns out he was having an affair, so she knew what was going on.
Allen proceeded to tell Connor about the late-night conversations that he and Sandy had. Connor found some call logs in the file that Allen had provided to Detective Turnbull back in 1996. This was Turnbull's primary source of information. Turnbull would ask Allen, Allen would produce the information. He wouldn't seek it out for himself or make sure that the paperwork and reports that he's getting are, in fact, from the actual companies they're supposed to come through.
Yeah, a third party is where you need the information to come from. We can't trust this guy.
Precisely. It showed that Sandy had contacted Bismarck United life insurance policy twice, just hours before she disappeared. Both calls lasted 10 seconds each after someone answered the phone. In an attempt to track down any information related to these two calls, Connor contacted the insurance company. Of course, it had been sold to another company, and then this company didn't have access to these records, and it became kind of a nightmare for Sergeant Connor and ultimately led to a dead end. However, it did spark an idea for Connor to reach out to the Human Resources Department at the Department of Transportation where Sandy worked. The director recalled that Allen came in to the office and aggressively demanded information about her benefits days, if not in those first couple of weeks after she disappeared. When asked, Allen did confirm that he received a payout on a $30,000 policy that he was the sole beneficiary of roughly 5 years after she disappeared.
So I guess he had her declared deceased? Is that the only time that they would actually pay out?
Correct.
Okay. It's not looking good.
In the years following Sandy's disappearance, Connor interviewed her mother, who told him that she was confident Sandy and Allen were just days away from these divorce proceedings, despite what Allen was telling him. She told Connor that Sandy was an avid journalist and wrote down every aspect of her day, which I'm always impressed by people who do this, because I've always wanted to try to journal, and I just can't get the words out.
Same. And it is like, if something ever happens to you and you have a documented journey of what you did every single day and who you got into arguments with or what your status of your thoughts are, that's the perfect, it's a great lead for police. Same, I have tried to journal. I wish I could do it, but I think my life is too boring for that.
I know. I can like bullet list my day for you, but you would be ridiculously bored.
Yes.
If Connor could find her journal, it would answer several questions. It would answer the state of Sandy's mind, where she believed her marriage stood, and so much more. But with no documentation proving that the marriage was in dissolution, Alan was granted access to all of Sandy's belongings. Remember how I said he was given her purse just days after her disappearance and her car within weeks? He also went into her home and gathered up many items. In an interview with Detective Turnbull, Sandy's then 16-year-old son told him that he had seen his mother's wedding rings in a change dish on the counter in Alan's house. But Turnbull never questioned it.
Oh.
When Connor spoke to Alan about this several years later, he said he knew he didn't take it from Sandy's trailer house, but couldn't remember why he was in possession of them. Perhaps she gave them back to him in the separation.
That could be true. I mean, considering they were going through a separation.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else, though, I just can't get on board with.
A polygraph test was suggested, but Alan's lawyer declined for him to take one.
That's not shocking at all. I did not think he would take one.
The amount of mistakes made by this police department is ongoing, from not verifying alibis properly to not processing potential crime scenes and not securing evidence. Connor learned that the 911 call from Sandy into the Bismarck Police Department was also deleted.
Oh, yeah.
He only had a transcript.
Why would it not be deleted? Oh my gosh.
Detective Turnbull was asked several times about why he didn't fingerprint the car. And he said, because there's no suspects in the case, we have no one to compare them to. If Allen's are there, they were married. If Sandy's are there, it's her car. You don't want them for the file in case you eventually have someone to compare them to?
Yeah. And if there was other fingerprints that you don't know who belongs to, it's good to have them on hand. Later date. Good Lord.
If this is a crime of opportunity and she was carjacked or something along those lines, if you look at that theory, what if this person's fingerprints are already on file? Then wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. You've got your dude.
Yes. Oh, my God. Oh, they don't know who a suspect is right when the crime was committed, so they're just not going to get the evidence. That is absolute insanity.
Detective Turnbull's investigations originally included a conversation with Sandy's ex-husband, Vernon. He talked about how Sandy had beliefs in the end-of-the-world scenarios and that at one point they had made a suicide pact that in the event of an apocalypse, the two would meet at Memorial Bridge, located just down the road from Centennial Park where her car was found, and jump together. Could this be the terrible conclusion to this case?
It's not out of the question that could be what happened. However, we will never know because no evidence was taken.
Vernon struggled with substance abuse and admitted to being high when Sandy had called him hours before her disappearance, and that he had not answered. He passed the polygraph test he was given and even told them that he didn't believe Sandy would commit suicide, as she believed that your soul could not enter heaven if you killed yourself. Vernon became a victim of homicide in 2005, where he was run over by his own car and died due to blunt force trauma on the side of the road. His murder is also unsolved.
What in the world? Wow.
Sandy and John's disappearance remains a mystery, even though they were declared deceased. I am going to share the missing flyer with this episode and implore you to share it as well. Someone knows something about what happened to Sandy and John. She was last seen wearing a blue sweatshirt, blue jeans, brown lace-up boots, and a blue down-filled jacket. Sandy would be 63 years old now, and John would be 31. If you have any information related to Sandy or John's sudden disappearance from Bismarck, North Dakota, please contact the Bismarck Police Department at 701-223-1212. What blows my mind about this is the most advancements in this case didn't come until mid-2000s.
That's insane. You might not know, but did they ever search the river once it wasn't freezing cold? I mean, it's cold, but not like freezing.
I did not find any record of that.
And based on it being a river, it probably would, be very difficult.
It has a high current as well.
Oh, wow. Gosh dang.
The most popular theory with this is that in the middle of her episode that she was having, she either killed John and then walked into the river to atone for whatever she had just, kind of had a panic moment and killed herself out of grief. But there's no evidence to support that.
Yeah, because there's zero evidence.
And where's her driver's license?
Yeah, why isn't it with the purse?
We would like to extend a thank you to the ever-talented Kyle Rebar for his audio work on today's episode. Just by listening to our content, you too are advocating for justice for these families. Thank you for making a difference in their lives as well.
We want to share a few ways you can support us to continue our mission. You can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $5 per month, or a simple rate and review on your favorite podcast platform helps us get in front of someone who may know something.
We will continue to shed a light on the forgotten victims, untangle the webs of deceit, and examine the eerie coincidences that make these cases so compelling.
We believe that working together can affect change and create a world where victims are heard, justice is served, and communities are empowered to make a difference, no matter where or who they are.